Hi, this is Michael Hawk. I would like to discuss about the birth of the American Sign Language, and which eventually later became the dark age of the sign language. Mostly, I did research a lot of information um, by my milestone paper, so I included with some other classes that was important. There were interesting. My focus on mostly how the sign language were created and changed perspective straightly from it, and people just seem like to change the perspective because of awesome influence and electronics influence as well, which became the harder for the deaf people, especially the deaf kids, to learn the American Sign Language, which was banned. So let's start part of that. Like Thomas Garrett, he was the father of the American Sign Language, but later he became principal at the deaf institution, which was called Kanat Aslam for the education and instruction of the deaf and dumb persons. That's what they called back in the days. Um, Before that, he got a lot of curious of the deaf community, and he was wondering how can we help the deaf children, the accommodations, how we can give them all the needs they need. But understand that there was no record in the 1800s around that, but they don't have a sign language really. There was never record that teachers teach the deaf children, so they don't know how to help. So what happened, no matter what the family of Coxwell, the Coxwell family had a deaf daughter and was very worried. How can they help? So the board gathered here that place, the Walter family's palace, and in America, and they were asking Garrett how they can help the child. But at first, to identify part of the requirement the child needs, he realized to go in the institution. But he heard somewhere in Britain they have it, but mistakenly, he meant was in Paris. So what happened? He decided to go to Paris to acquire for old French language. Well, and eventually he met Abby Sikor, who introduced his favorite student named Lloyd Clark. So, and that while he was in France, he was learning Old French language for 13 months. So, as a part of that, he was designed to confided Mr. Sakard and Clark, both of them, that you want to bring a David DeVale. Turned out was Clark himself came with him to America. So a part of that, he was established the institution I mentioned earlier. And at first they had 7 students. One of them among the 7 was Alice Coxwell. And turned out and he was doing most of the work. I mean, Clark himself, but not Gary Dad. So Gary Dad did some help too, but not, most of it was give credit to Clark for him. So he was teaching students how the language develops into American Sign Language. So what happened? We had an instruction that where it was all go so well that we get rewards, grants, all kinds of it from senator, president, and other families, organizations, many things, and the people from different states start following Gaudet. Here's an example. It was so well. Eventually, the SARS works well with the community. That's so wonderful. But the part is, unfortunately, is we have the enemies. I call it, I disagree with this idea, was Alexander Graham Bell and the R2 movement was the Orderson movement and the Agriculture movement become a really rough side on the deaf community. So what happened, Garden, with all the work that happened, that was almost destroyed by the Maryland Conference of 1880. And then in Thailand, what happened is everybody, I mean, all the teachers were going out there, and the meeting with different representatives of different countries, and they vote a bill where sign up was being And unfortunately, they were forcing the law to make it happen where everybody they had to force their children to learn awesome. There's some who will be able, there's some that okay. That's good. So what happened to understand the Mellon conference that all of them, all the attendees, the people that are actually hearing. So and unfortunately at that time they had a bigger influence where the American side which was really not American side which but side which was really considered inferior. That's where that side which was thinking, which is what I call it, is primitive language. That's what a lot of them think about it. Karen Alexander Graham Bell, the founder of telephone. Which is irony because he was born from a deaf mother and he was married with a deaf wife, but he was strongly encouraging the deaf children and deaf kids and deaf people to use only awesome. And the emphasis is awesome only. So what happened was the American was passing and Alexander Graham Bell not really going to put deaf children on their side of which he doesn't care. He's just mostly thrilled about it. So what happened? The law has never established that children or the language they were to learn what became the natural language that their children developed. From learning sign language to part of the community, but the point is, excuse me, the point is what happened when Alexander Graham Bell, he has a lot of argument where Moses belief was related to energetics somewhere between energetics or some movement, mostly. But a part of energetics, he doesn't want deaf people, both, or some one of them, to be married. Because he was worried about that kids will replace population of the here community, which is not entirely true, but he doesn't really understand the part, but his point of argument is where a lot of this happened. But his son, Thomas Gaudet, son, Edward Miller Gaudet, put out his father's interesting. So what happened in American Sala, which was actually protected by him, yes, but was nearly destroyed, not by Edward himself, no. The order sim, the other movement that were encouraging parents, educators to do corporal punishment. The corporal punishment is everybody has different perspective, from minor to extreme. So what happened? That can be some like minor, maybe small discipline, small, while it's so massive, it can be really physical bruising. So what happened? And some countries that still follow up the Maryland conference example. And recently, I can say some countries just unbanned their example of the conference. So what happened recently? 2010, whatever country did that, it was finally unbanned. And the other one was 2015, but it's very risky, as which is sad, it's true. So what happened? The deaf children in America, I'm gonna focus just America. So they had set up some cigarette club, which I'll describe an example, the Breakfast Club. So what happened? Cigarette Breakfast Club, they just gather up a whole new students from freshmen, those and some more junior seniors. Now instead they never had the language. So that's maybe those who already had the experience of make a sign language, their job teach the kids to learn sign language. Some case teacher fall off, but like cigarette they fall off. Some not. But what happened? And they pass it on. But the laws, and in fact, that from 1880 to recently 1960 something. Anyway, so about 80 years, almost 100 years. Now was passed on, the law was banned. So that's the great part of the club. Thank you to the students for able to keep the silos alive. They were able to do it, to make that happen. Well, a lot of people didn't want that happen. So at that time, it was great that we're able to pass it on. And also, Edward himself was able to not draining, but also draining for to help the deaf kids to keep the silos alive. So what happened? They had an organization involved. There was some organism to electronics try to challenge the laws. They tried to set up to bring a ban make that happen, but most Congress senators never really care about that law. They would try to bring it, but at least it gave some short-term protection. But mostly the work was carried out himself fought against against the true group. So what happened is what happened with the Orson movement, but some part of the freedom was from the Bill's perspective that would have that they would think part of ASL learning was interior and it was just shown in many different ways. For example, they call it primitive language that were complained because it's not our language, it was from France, but he missed the point. Well, true the part, the market side language that learned from it, it's about 50-60% mostly than of our ASL have it was blood French side language. But a lot of time costs strutters rules still related. So but part of Gardner tried to establish the natural language, which Bell never really believed it. So what happened? They had two artists clash. They have two different beliefs of how production went. That's true, but it's two different worlds where they could help. So what happened is his son Edward Merrick had to go to different countries to argue against Alexander Graham Bell. So another point of that community, we really despite Alexander Graham Bell his whole belief. But which only strange, he had a deaf wife, he had a deaf mother, which is very strange. A lot of us don't understand that. So what happened? Because of Alexander Graham Bell, he was actually make some changes, but not really benefiting the deaf community, really. But Thomas Garrett's son, Edward, was trying to make a different adjustment where kids need different cards. They'll provide them or some they want. They'll provide triplet only, sign language only, or mix, what's called piercing. But they're trying to make sure they get every that child get the combination they need. Which awesome, and Oceanic don't really believe that. So what happened is everyone was able to protect the deaf students at Gallaudet University. Here's interesting fact because of Edward, he actually established Gallaudet University. But at some point, we understand he protected the legacy of Gallaudet, but it also the legacy of American Silo, which we all the community appreciated for him. So we were able to make the difference. And we were able to learn Israel. Because all thanks to the Scouter family that will make this happen. So thank you for watching. And I hope you have a wonderful day.